The farmhouse stood alone, a sentinel against the vast cornfield. Weathered wood, bleached by sun and rain, spoke of years gone by. Windows, like vacant eyes, stared out at the endless rows of green. The Miller family arrived, hopeful and full of life. John, the father, carried their belongings, his muscles straining against the weight. Mary, his wife, soothed their two children, their laughter echoing in the stillness. The air, thick with the smell of earth and something else, something unidentifiable, hung heavy. John caught Mary's eye, a flicker of unease passing between them. "It's just the old house smell," he reassured her, though his voice lacked conviction. The sun, a blazing orb in the sky, dipped below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the cornfield. As darkness enveloped the farmhouse, a shiver ran down Mary's spine. The house, once full of promise, now seemed to loom over them, a silent, watchful presence. Days turned into weeks, the family settling into their new life. John toiled tirelessly, repairing the neglected farm. Mary, ever resourceful, transformed the dusty rooms into a semblance of home. The children, young and full of adventurous spirit, took to the cornfield like fish to water. Their laughter echoing through the stalks was the only sound that dared break the silence. Yet a sense of unease lingered. Whispers, carried on the wind, seemed to swirl around the farmhouse. Locals, their faces etched with a mixture of pity and fear, spoke of a tragedy, but their words were vague, their stories incomplete. "Best leave well enough alone," one old farmer muttered, his eyes filled with a strange knowing. John, though troubled, dismissed their warnings as superstitious nonsense. The rational part of him refused to believe. The sun began its descent, casting long, menacing fingers of shadow across the field. John, working tirelessly in the barn, paused, a cold shiver running down his spine. He could have sworn he saw a figure, tall and gaunt, flitting between the cornstalks. He shook his head, attributing it to fatigue. The days were long, the work demanding. It was easy to let his imagination run wild. But as darkness fell, so too did a palpable sense of dread. Mary, her face pale, met him at the porch. "The children," she whispered, her voice tight with worry. "They saw something in the cornfield." John, his heart pounding in his chest, felt a knot of fear tighten in his gut. Sleep, once a refuge, became a battleground. Nightmares plagued Mary. Visions of a shadowy figure, its eyes glowing with malevolent intent. John, though he tried to remain strong, couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The children, their innocence fading, grew quiet, their laughter replaced with nervous glances over their shoulders. The cornfield, once a source of adventure, now filled them with a primal fear. One evening, as John sat by the window, a chill snaked its way down his spine. There, at the edge of the cornfield, stood the figure from his nightmares. Tall, skeletal, its edges blurring in the fading light. It seemed to beckon him, its silence more terrifying than any scream. Panic welled up inside John, a primal instinct to protect his family taking over. He gathered the children, their eyes wide with terror, and ushered them into the relative safety of the house. Mary, sensing his fear, met him at the door, her face a mask of worry. "What is it, John? What did you see?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's here," he breathed, his voice hoarse with fear. "The thing from the cornfield." He quickly bolted the door, as if a simple lock could keep out the terror that lurked outside. The night stretched on, an eternity of whispering shadows and unexplained noises. Each creak of the floorboards, each sigh of the wind sent shivers down their spines. They huddled together, a family united by fear. Section 6. Face to Face. Sleep, when it finally came, was fitful and shallow. John, his senses on high alert, was jolted awake by a blood-curdling scream. It was Mary, her eyes wide with terror, pointing a trembling finger at the window. There, its skeletal hand pressed against the glass, was the figure. Its eyes, two burning embers in the darkness, seemed to bore into John's very soul. A wave of icy dread washed over him, paralyzing him with fear. He knew then that he had to confront his fear for the sake of his family. He grabbed his hunting rifle, the cold steel strangely comforting in his hand, and slowly approached the window. Section 7. Escape from the nightmare. With a surge of adrenaline, John threw open the window, the figure vanishing into thin air. He stepped outside, the cool night air doing little to quell the fear that raged inside him. He scanned the cornfield, the moonlight casting long, eerie shadows between the stalks. The air was thick with silence, a silence so profound it was deafening. Then he heard it, a rustling sound coming from deep within the field. He moved cautiously, his rifle at the ready, his heart pounding in his chest. The rustling grew louder, closer, until it seemed to be all around him. He spun around, his finger tightening on the trigger, but there was nothing there. Section 8. The Truth in the Soil. Exhausted and terrified, John returned to the house, his mind racing. He had to get his family out of there, away from the nightmare that had taken root in their lives. As dawn broke, casting its pale light across the cornfield, John made a decision. He would take Mary and the children into town, find a place to stay, and then he would come back. He had to know what was happening, had to uncover the truth behind the haunting. He gathered his family, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear, and bundled them into the truck. As they drove away, the farmhouse shrinking in the rearview mirror, John couldn't shake the feeling that they were leaving something behind, something dark and sinister. Section 9. The Lingering Dread. John never returned to the farmhouse. Some say he couldn't face the terror that awaited him, while others whisper that the cornfield claimed him as its own. The truth, like the secrets buried deep within the soil, remained hidden. The farmhouse stood empty, a silent testament to the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. The cornfield, swaying gently in the breeze, held its secrets close, a constant reminder of the darkness that lay just beneath the surface. And so the legend of the haunted cornfield lived on, a chilling tale whispered around campfires and late-night gatherings, a story that sent shivers down the spines of those who dared to listen. The cornfield, once a symbol of abundance and life, now served as a chilling reminder that some places are best left undisturbed, for the shadows of the past can sometimes reach out and touch the present, leaving an indelible mark of fear.